Malvern Museum a couple of years ago. We had both agreed to volunteer to do a character interpretation, and she was one newly emancipated slave and I was another. And we're doing it again this Saturday. Or next, whatever. You know what I mean.
17th of June.
1 to 3. Okay.
Juneteenth it is.
Yes. The real Juneteenth is 19th, but that's on a Monday, so we're doing it on a Saturday. All right. I call this piece Free Ice Cream. A friend and I made a day trip to Houston to visit the Project Row House installation, where we had submitted a reporting. Our submission had to be no longer than a minute, and we had to recite an excerpt from a famous Black intellectual or artist or academic. I had a bittersweet experience. On the one hand, I was happy to contribute to the creative repurposing and rejuvenation of those historic Black houses. On the other hand, I currently live on the east side of Austin, where people of color have been sequestered for generations and are now being systematically driven out due to gentrification. After experiencing the installation, I used my phone to find a nearby upscale cafe. Initially, I wasn't in the mood for salad and sandwiches, but since we had a 3-hour drive back to Austin and they had a wine menu, I figured, okay, this would be a quick meal, get us back on the road. For the most part, that happened. I ordered their signature salad with smoked salmon and a glass of Malbec. My friend ordered her entree and a glass of wine, and everything came out in a reasonable amount of time, although I had to ask the other server for water, since that's one thing our waiter forgot to bring. And then it happened. During our conversation and dining, time ticked on and we became invisible. I noticed our invisibility sooner than my friend, since she was animatedly talking while her back was to most of the restaurant. She couldn't see how the two servers buzzed around the entire restaurant, interacting with every single table but ours. Our server briefly noticed us when we had to rearrange the small tables where we were seated to accommodate a larger party. He removed my friend's empty entree plate before moving our table over along with other smaller tables that shifted to the right to accommodate the larger table coming in. But that was the last time we had his attention. He flitted among the other tables in our row, especially the original large table to my immediate right, and the newly gathered large party at the other end to my left. He even checked on the table to my immediate left, which was just a couple, but would turn on his heel away from us, missing the few nonverbal attempts to get his attention, such as raising my hand or trying to catch his eye. See, I think it's obnoxious to raise my voice to a server, to get his attention or to get the server's attention, or to tap or grab or otherwise touch a server as they're hustling around every other table but my own. Besides, as I observed our servers' interactions with the other tables, none of those people had to do any of that to get his attention. They were successful at the non-verbal and non-tactile gestures. That's when I started to play my least favorite game, intersectionality. There are two versions of this game, invisible and singled out. In one version, the player tries to figure out why she's suddenly been rendered invisible in a seemingly normal situation. In the other version, the player tries to figure out why she's been suddenly singled out within a seemingly normal situation. And I say seemingly normal situation because I'm referring to how everyone else the player sees is not experiencing the same treatment. Whichever version of the game the player unwittingly finds herself in, she analyzes how she got there. So in my case, was it racism, sexism, classism, a combination, or something else? I easily dismissed classism since we were better dressed than most, although I'm sure we were not the most moneyed people there. The next thing I ruled out was mere racism, because the cafe was filled with a rainbow of hues, including interracial couples and mixed race tables. Even the parties where there weren't any white people were still had servers approaching them. That's when I noticed we were the only table without a guy. And I said, since our server is an Asian male, I wondered if he had a predisposition to focus on men. Even the two black guys sitting at the bar, together hadn't turned invisible. Now, I found that ironic because even our server had a female boss. So at one point, during a break in my friend's conversation, I blurted out, "Do you notice that we've become invisible?" She readily agreed and volunteered to talk to someone about it. I thanked her since normally I'm the one who has to get up and, be the militant female and point some things out and have the confrontational talk. Her response was, "Well, you drove." Take this one. She calmly arose from the table and confidently strode to the bar where the other server was, and in the distance I saw the polite smile on her face as his expression transformed. Then, just as calmly as she left, she returned to the table, leaving him to scramble to get a water pitcher and dessert menus together. Essentially, she told him that we were from Austin and we had not come to Houston to have a black moment. However, our server hadn't refilled our water glasses when he refilled the other tables to either side of us, nor had he told us about dessert. We just overheard the description when he told the larger party beside us about it. The other server refilled our water glasses and brought us menus before I witnessed him approach our server and tell him our concerns. With much remorse, our server arrived at our table and apologized. He told us he'd been distracted by the two larger tables. At that point, I held my tongue, since the table immediately to my left was just two people who'd received the server's attention, which I concluded was because at least one of them was a guy. While I had that inner conversation, our server described to us the delicious locally made ice cream. We both ordered the Nutella studded with marshmallows, which he comped. I ate my free ice cream with less enjoyment than dessert usually brings me. It was a nice gesture, but I'd much rather pay for my ice cream with money versus his embarrassment of rendering us invisible. Now, I realize that this is an isolated incident, only in the sense that the conflict was de-escalated and resolved peacefully and had not become an ongoing, protracted argument between us and the server or even us and the cafe. However, that isolated incident has become the latest star in my personal intersectionality constellation. There are quite a few stars in that constellation. They vary in size and intensity, all the isolated incidents forming a pattern that's easily recognizable to others who have similar constellations of their own. When I look inwardly and meditate on reimagined freedom, I see my constellation where no more stars have been added.